what was your initial reaction, when you heard that C word, the cancer word, and, what doctors have said about your prognosis? You seem very optimistic. Your spirits are very good.
Well, at first I felt that it was confined to my liver and that the operation had completely removed it, so I felt quite relieved. And then that same afternoon, we had an MRI of my head and neck, and it showed up that it was already in 4 places in my brain. So I would say that night and the next day until I came back up to Emory, I just thought I had a few weeks left.
When former President Jimmy Carter announced what will, in essence, eventually cost him his life, I will admit to some mixed feelings, and with certain reasons. When Jimmy Carter was president, an event occurred that changed where I lived at the time completely for the worse. It turned what was a beautiful area of the country into a murderous disaster. And his actions were directly responsible for the deaths of many Americans and illegal aliens because, in a nutshell, he sat back and allowed a communist dictator to dump his fetid refuse on the shores of America.
For Fidel Castro, it was tantamount to an act of genocide. With one fell swoop, he rid Cuba of thousands and thousands of undesirables. He emptied his prisons. He cleared the bums off the streets of Havana. Murderers, thieves, perverts, prostitutes, the retarded, crippled, the winos, all were rounded up, sent to Mariel Harbor, and put aboard boats bound for Miami.
Fidel Castro himself publicly stated, "I have flushed the toilets of Cuba on the United States." He bragged about it.
One boat left Mariel for Key West every 5 minutes. They came unhindered, night and day.
It became commonplace in South Florida. Shots are fired, people are killed, and much of the time the killers are people who came over from Cuba in the boat lift of 1980.
Consequently, our homicide rate doubled that year.
It'd be like if an invading army was dropped in here to rape, pillage, and burn in our town.
The Mariel boat lift was a turning point in my life and that of my then home in South Florida. Then President Carter opened his arms and allowed every piece of filth to stay in America. Everyone granted immediate refugee status, and to be fair, there were some very nice, wonderful people who arrived in America on those boats, but they were a pitiful minority. The murder rate shot up as criminal Marielitos revealed, and absolutely had a joy in their newfound criminal ability. The drug trade skyrocketed. Miami Beach went from a comfortable place for retirement to a repulsive sewer of crime overnight. And Jimmy Carter's the man who allowed it to happen, something I and hundreds of thousands of others will never, ever forgive him for. But let us pause. Jimmy Carter was still president, and for that he deserves a level of respect. I and many others still to this day hold him responsible for what many believe is just one act that will forever mark him as one of the great presidential failures. And I can say that comfortably, having spoken with hundreds of people from every political party, honest and hard-working people who made South Florida their home and saw their businesses and their families crushed by his decision. And many who to this day say the words Marielito and Jimmy Carter in the same sentence only to spit. But he is still a former president of my country. And as much as I dislike his actions as president over the boat lift, as much as I find his call for the recognition of the bloodthirsty terrorist group Hamas to be reprehensible, as much as I disagree with his actions over the Panama Canal, Iran, and so many other issues, there's one thing I could never do: take advantage of a man with cancer to call for his death. Debbie Schlussel is a lawyer, an author, a political commentator, and blogger. To be upfront, I've had her on programs over the years to comment on issues, but not recently. She'll never appear again on any show I have a part in because she's the embodiment of everything that's wrong in America. The seething, abject, and ugly hate that is spewed by the desperate to curry another few minutes of fame no matter how despicable their actions are. When Carter announced his cancer diagnosis, Schlussel took to Twitter, celebrating it, reveling, loving the coming death of a former president, and using his ailment to spread a particular brand of evil. Responses on her Twitter page have been mixed, some even rubbing their virtual hands with glee over the impending death of the president. Schlussel's been right there with them, comparing those who have a problem with her comments as basically being aligned with Nazis and being haters of Jews. It's ugly, it's vile, it's beneath contempt. Schlussel is at the core of what's wrong in America. Our inability to have civil discussions, to stare into the maw of reality from every angle, and then work them to a solution that, while maybe not always perfect for everybody, at least moves us forward. She and her acolytes, the ones calling for the death of a former president simply because he's not their political favorite, force us to bring them and their actions into the light, so that maybe, just maybe, we can rise to a level of reasoning greater than theirs, which would be just a millimeter above that of animal feces. That's my opinion, telling it like it is. Rock on, true believers.